Good evening. This is Real Talk History as a Weapon for Black Liberation, and I'm your host, Dr. Sundiata Kaita Chajua. Today we have as our guest Dr. Akinyele Umoja. Dr. Umoja is a professor of African American Studies. He is at Georgia State University. He is the author of We Will Shoot Back, Armed Resistance, and the Mississippi Freedom Movement, which was named the 2014 Anna Julia Cooper CLR James Award for the best book in Africana Studies by the National Council for Black Studies. We Will Shoot Back also earned the 2014 Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Award for Excellence in Literature. He is also the co-editor of Greenwood Press's Black Power Encyclopedia, which came out in 2018, and it was named Reference and User Services Association, a division of American Library Association 2019 list of outstanding references for adults. Umoja is also the editor of a special issue of the Black Scholar on the legacy of his comrade, revolutionary activist, attorney, and late mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, the Honorable Chokwe Lumumba. Umoja's research has been featured in several other journals and anthologies. His most recent work, The Memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams, African American Freedom, Armed Resistance, and International Solidarity, which he co-edited with Gloria Anib House and John Bracy Jr. Additionally, in addition to his academic work, Dr. Umoja is very engaged in social justice advocacy. Along with his wife, Amanata, and other comrades, Umoja organized Atlanta's Malcolm X Festival in 1989. It is still going and it is attended by thousands. Umoja received acknowledgement from the National Council of Black Political Scientists in 1998 and the National Council of Black Studies 2008 for his activism. Due to his civic engagement and scholar activism, he was inducted into Selma, Alabama's Hall of Resistance, an enslavement and Civil War museum during the annual Bridge Crossing and Jubilee celebration. So I bring you my brother and comrade, Dr. Akinyele Umoja.
Hey, peace and
Welcome.
power, free the land, Dr. Sundiata, Chajua, Baba Sundiata, however we want to refer to you. We both Babas now. We met each
Yeah,
other.
we both
I always
Bibles.
tell everybody we met each other. We both were thin with afros. I think
Man,
it
it was 76.
yeah,
Can you
76,
imagine?
Tougaloo College.
Tougaloo College,
Everybody said, you
1976.
gotta meet Sundiata.
Oh man. Yeah,
Yeah.
brother. So you've been on Real Talk before, so you know we keep it formal. Like I say, man, how many years have we known each other? What is
Since
that? 76?
76. So that, oh man, was that 50 years?
Shit, is that 50 years? That's 50 years.
Damn.
It's exactly 50 goddamn years.
Oh Lord.
Oh boy.
Lord have mercy. 50 years of
Oh
long
man.
distance runners.
Yeah. So look, um, we're gonna have a great conversation. You know all of that. So I always start with biographical questions. You've been on before, but there's always that opportunity that we got new folk, right?
Yes, sir.
And so I do want to go into some of your background and development. So, as you know, I'm a devotee of Bill Cross and the
Uh-huh.
negrescence theory. So, part of what I'm going to want you to do as you move through your background, if you can make use of negrescence to help give a kind of sharper point to some things, uh, that would be wonderful. So let's start with you. Tell me about the place you were born,
Uh-huh.
the era, and what was happening in that place and in that era, and also talk about your class background. So essentially, I want to know how you became the Black scholar activist Akinyele Umoja.
And I'm trying to do it briefly. But I was born in Los Angeles, California. My father was a minister in the Church of Christ. Um, he was one of the first. Let me see. My father was a sharecropper until he was in his 20s, and then he got the opportunity to go to Nashville Christian Institute when he was
Oh,
in his
where was he a sharecropper?
in the Mississippi Delta, a place called he was born in a place called Alligator, Mississippi, and the family sharecropped through the Mississippi Delta and Arkansas Delta. And
Okay.
so when he was in his 20s and he hadn't gone to high school yet, he was able to go to high school, Nashville Christian Institute. And then he became one of the first Black men to go to Pepperdine College
Oh,
in
wow.
Los Angeles. That's where he met my mother, who was a valedictorian in her high school. She was from a sharecropping family too in Oklahoma. We woke Oklahoma town founded by the Black Seminoles, Seminole Freedmen. But
What's
she's
the name of it?
Seminole freedmen in our lineage. But she there's a whole nother part of that story. But they moved there after my grandfather had got into it with some white folks in northern Louisiana. They moved there. She was valedictorian in her high school, but she decides to move with her older siblings in Los Angeles, and she was gonna go to school for nursing. But she met my father. They get married. My mother ultimately becomes a civil servant. First as a clerical person, but uh, she was able to. When I was in high school, in early college, she was able to get a mid-level position as a what do you call it? Administrator,
Administrator, clerk.
administrator in Social Security.
Okay.
She was able to advance that way. Um, Now there's a period of time that we moved to Oklahoma when I'm
Really?
really
No.
yeah, I'm real young, and that's when I first experienced segregation. And so when we talk about, for those who don't know, Bill Cross talks about from Negro to Black, where how
Yeah, yeah.
for Black consciousness. And I remember at that time, um, because I hate to admit it now, but growing up during that time in '54, born in 1954, um, watching, consuming the media, stuff
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I love
yeah,
Superman. I
yeah.
love white settlers like Davy Crockett. You
Brother,
know,
we watch the same stuff.
I know, but I'm
The
telling
most
you,
recent
for
stuff.
those young people don't
Yeah.
know the era, we didn't have no Black Panther. We didn't
No,
have,
no,
have Luke Cage or nothing like that.
no, we didn't have that.
And so, but I remember one time there was an amusement park we went to, and my father pointed out another amusement park in Oklahoma City, and I said, "How come we never been there?" And he said, "Because we were colored." And
Mm.
that was my first, wow, kind of shock that things are different. And then there was also a thing watching the news, and I was told later this happened in New Orleans where a Black woman was trying to desegregate a school with her daughter or take her daughter to school to be desegregated, and they were attacked by a mob of white women. So
Mm.
just doing those things made me more aware. But I really think moving back to Los Angeles around
Of what age?
around 6, we
Okay.
moved back to LA, and we moved to Compton. And by the time I'm 11, we had a Watts uprising. And
Mm.
so just witnessing all that, and then having there was one of my friends in school and who also went to the same church, and this brother would tell me stuff like, I'm not going to fight no white man's war. You know, that had a
Yeah,
profound
yeah,
impact
yeah,
because he was somebody, he was a few years older than me. I respected him. Of course, we had people like Muhammad Ali and others who were saying they weren't going to fight in Vietnam. Um, or, you know, later on, and I think Bill Cross talks about certain things disturb your colonial mentality, your colonized.
hmm
He didn't call
hmm
it colonized, but I'll call it that. So it was being disturbed, and there were different things like the Watts Uprising. It was like later on reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. It was beginning to become aware of Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown,
yeah, yeah,
folks like that. And I remember being in high school, junior high, getting ready to go to high school. You know, so they came to us to recruit us into ROTC when we were getting ready to go to high school.
whoa,
And yeah, they were recruited. They sent a white guy from the military to talk to us about it, and he said, "How many young men want to, you know, become part of ROTC?" And hardly any of the brothers raised their hands. And so the teacher, who was this redneck from Texas, we used to call him George Wallace. That's what my nickname for him was. But he said, "The mistake you made is you asked how many young men, and it's nothing here but boys. All the males in the class
whoa,
raised their hand but me, saying they wanted to sign up." So one of the young ladies said, "Well, you gonna let him call you boy?" I said, "No, because he ain't gonna call Muhammad Ali no boy." And so a few of my friends heard that, they put their hands down. But you know, so our consciousness was being impacted by the movement that was going on during that particular
right,
time.
right,
You know, it was the rebellion on one hand, but then it was like groups like uh the Malcolm X Foundation, headed by Hakeem Jamal,
hmm
in the community. It was the US organization. It was the Black Panther Party. Just becoming more aware of these organizations. And while I'm in high school, people from the party would come to the high school and give us a newspaper. And so I'm reading about the party, and then later on read George Jackson. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and I know we're going to talk about internationalism. Just looking in the Panther paper and seeing a masthead with Ho Chi Minh, reading about Yasser Arafat at that particular time.
And the PLO. Did you ever read Muhammad Speaks?
Yeah, yeah, but not as much. I would get Muhammad Speaks. In fact, when I was in high school, my brother would bring Muhammad Speaks by my house and would take me up to the temple. We had a temple in Compton. I think it was temple number 54 in Compton.
Yeah.
Would take us down there. Uh, and even later had people trying to recruit me into the nation. But I was more attracted. Of course, I was more grounded in Malcolm.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really more identified with the Black Panther Party, and I remember one time the brother would take me to the temple, and we heard, you know, after we heard the minister after the end of the session, they had a audio tape from Elijah Muhammad. We heard that, and then the brother took me outside, and he didn't realize where my head was at. It actually turned me off. He said there were three cars in front. There was a Coupe de Ville, Seville, maybe, and a Grand Prix. And he said, "Brother, if you join the nation to become a minister, you could have all this." And that kind of turned me
Oh,
off.
wow,
Yeah,
really?
that's
Yeah,
the
that
so
blatant materialism.
exactly. we were talking about revolution.
Yeah, yeah.
So and for people out there, keep this is in 1971, 72. So the consciousness on the street and movement was still around. Even though I will say during that period of time, this is in Los Angeles area, this is a few years after the LAPD and the first time SWAT was utilized in the United States, attacked the Black Panther Party on 41st and Central. So in the early 70s, we didn't see the same presence, organized presence, I should say, of revolutionary nationalism that we saw in the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give people an idea, I remember when I was junior high school, and I always tell this story. The two brothers that I would today we would call them thugs. They
Yeah.
met me and asked me, was I going to school tomorrow? And I said, sure. They said, we're gonna whoop your ass if you come to school tomorrow. What's
Yeah.
up? This is Malcolm X's birthday. I don't know if it was the day Malcolm X's birthday or the day he died, but the next day, people hardly there were a few people went to school. I think this had to be 67, 67,
Mm.
68. And the following year in Compton Unified School District, I think this was 69, a letter was sent to our parents saying if we didn't come to school, we wouldn't be penalized because it was so much absenteeism the year
Right.
before they anticipated that. Unfortunately, by the time I was a senior, we only had a few of us who didn't go to school on Malcolm's birthday and the organized presence wasn't there in our community like it was years before. I mean, there were people there with flyers. It was being organized.
Right. Right.
It wasn't
You know,
just
there was a wave of boycotts from like six school boycotts in largely northern communities
Mhm.
from like 63 to 70, 71.
Mm, 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 mm.
The,
Mostly in
you
the
know, the
Midwest,
typical
Northeast.
things, want black teachers, want black
Right,
history.
right, right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
I have this flyer where I think it's in 66. Ram in New York, or really they call themselves the Black Panther Party. And it's before the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was there,
Right.
was calling for school boycotts. They wanted black principals. They wanted black history to be taught in schools, things of that nature. And it was in Harlem.
Yeah. So I think that was part of that wave.
Right.
Okay, I want to go back and pick up something in terms of dialectic, because when you talked about the kinds of media exposure that you had as a young person, which I also had. So we're talking 50s, early 60s, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it was Disney. It
Mm-hmm.
was like there was this show I used to watch called Swamp Fox, and it was about
I used to love
fighting in the guerrilla warfare during the American Revolution, right?
right,
And I used to watch Zorro and of course the Lone Ranger,
right.
and I think that I was able to that I got something from it that helped me become a radical,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the big theme in Swamp Foxes was, of course, resistance,
Mm-hmm.
right, to a colonial power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I think I took something positive from that, though we know that, if we ever appeared in there, we were enslaved, right? But the big thing that I got was Zorro and understanding the difference between Zorro and the Lone Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
Because Zorro fought against the state
Right. He was. Right.
and for the peasantry,
Right. Right.
even
Right.
though he himself was bourgeois,
Right.
was, was
Some
monarchical.
would
Yeah,
reject
yeah,
it was class suicide in some degree because he's
yeah.
fighting.
It was class suicide that he
Right.
was engaged in, but it was along the lines of nationality because he's fighting. He's Mexican, and the
Right.
Americans are taking over. And
Right.
so Zorro, as opposed to the Lone Ranger, which quote unquote went after the
Like First Nation.
criminal, went after criminal bank robbers and
Right. Right. Right.
like
Right.
that,
Right.
and of
Right.
course was killing the indigenous.
Right.
So there was the question of U.S. Yankee imperialism. Somebody just put that in there. Yeah, that Josh did. Yes, Zorro fought Spanish. Was of the Spanish. He fought the Spanish nobility and Yankee imperialism. So I
Right.
took something positive
I need to go
from
back.
that I think
I hate to.
all of us did, whether we have gone back, you know what I mean, and excavated it. It gave us a sense of, justice,
I used to
as
like
well as being
Swamp
in the
Fox
church.
too, but it got me in trouble. Here's how.
Yeah, go ahead.
This has nothing to do with politics. Maybe it does. Uh, my family moved into the neighborhood my mother lives in now. The little gang in that area, in that street, was connected with what they call the treetops. Across the way were the Swamp Boys. So
Oh.
I was asked, you with the Swamp Boys or the treetops? And I said the Swamp Boys, based on my affinity to Swamp Fox. That got me jumped on.
Oh man.
So it got me in trouble a little bit. But I used to like Swamp Fox too.
Man, we had a group of I don't know, it must have been 60, 70 of us kids in the second, third, fourth grade. And we had this central park in the largest section of the black community, Southside Park, and it had rolling hills. And we saw the sixth and fifth graders as our oppressors. So we
Uh,
band together about 60 and we'd come off the hill beating the shit out of sixes. You know, we get about 5 or 6 kids home. Come off the hill, swamp fox, swamp fox.
Lord have
Oh man.
mercy.
So look, man, let's switch it up a bit. So you're a leader, and have been a leader since its formation of the New African Peoples Organization and Malcolm X grassroots movement. Can you talk about their origin, founding, ideology, strategy, practices, and any initiatives that you got going on now?
Oh, very good. Very good question. The New African Peoples Organization started in 1984. The people who founded that organization came from a variety of groups, from some from the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa. Some of us came from the African People's Party. Some of us came from a group that I was a part of that was affiliated with African People's Party as well. Well, African People's Party and the other group, House of Umoja, we're uh, both come out of the Revolutionary Action Movement. Group that a lot of people don't know about, but it was considered one of the most dynamic organizations of the 1960s. It was the first organization to use the term revolutionary nationalism.
And can you say a little bit more about RAM, particularly leaders and seminal work that people could turn to read, particularly journals?
There are two in particular. One was Black America. If you could get a hold of that, hold on to it because it's hard to find. And the other journal was called Soul Book,
Yeah.
that came out of the Bay Area. Some of my mentors started in 1964. Soul Book was the uh, first journal in English to publish the work of Frantz Fanon, which
Mm.
it was published in French originally, but they
Right.
translated not only his but Cheikh Anta Diop's work, but they would also translate works from the Vietnamese.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
so it was very international. Fact in the first uh, issue of Soul Book is dedicated to Patrice Lumumba, dedicated to uh, patriots, freedom fighters out of the Cameroons. Felix Mumier, I believe the brother's name, who was a patriot in Cameroon, but also dedicated to Antonio Maceo of Cuba,
Mhm.
dedicated to the four young women, four young sisters killed in Birmingham, Alabama, Medgar Evers. So it made these connections between our struggle internationally and our struggle inside of the U.S. empire. Um, and so it always had this revolutionary nationalist outlook. Uh, and that same year that Soul Book was elevated, you would have the people who founded that group connect with people on the East Coast. They met in Nashville, Tennessee at a student conference, Afro American Student Conference. Uh, so people like Muhammad Ahmed, or later also known as Max Stanford, who J. Edgar Hoover said was the most dangerous man in America during that particular time. Uh, Many of them were inspired by the thought of Robert Williams,
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm X, and we're looking globally as well as inside the United States. And again, this concept of revolutionary nationalism that we needed to have if we were going to be free as a people, that it had to be in the context of a revolution, of elimination of capitalism, of imperialism, and then emerge some political power that gives us some form of self-determination. So that's many of us come out of that political legacy. One person I want to mention in the creation of NAPO, who's now an ancestor, before he went underground, Matulu Shakur, who had Ram legacy and also Republic of New Africa legacy, tried to bring together different elements. A lot of the people we had as leaders, a little bit older than us, but we kind of didn't feel they were pushing the struggle. One of the people you work with, Bobby Mario Badelli,
Yes,
the
yes.
people who were working with Bobby Mari were questioning some of his um, perspective in terms of the necessity of revolutionary change. So if you think about people like Chokwe Lumumba, Ahmed Obafemi, both who are now ancestors, like Sisters Fulani Suni Ali and Matulu, who are younger people who work with Bobby Mari, they had critiques of maybe his style of work, even though they respected him as an elder
Yeah.
in the movement. And so 1984.
As you say, I knew Amari.
Yeah, when I met you, you had been working
Yeah,
with him.
I worked under Amari, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Was he in prison by that point?
No, 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 no.
Okay. So,
Um, he had gotten out and had taken back the leadership in the Mississippi RNA, um, and in fact, I don't know that he ever went back.
well,
But
let me see. If it was 76 when I met you, because let me see, I know he got out in 81. He might have went, you know, and out.
yeah, maybe there was a time when he went back in, but he was certainly out during my time in Tougaloo.
Okay.
He had probably just gotten out, maybe a year before.
Yeah, he was out
He
the
gotten
year
things
before
back
that,
up and running.
because before I went down there and met you, I think Watani, my brother Watani and Makungu, they went down there and they told me going through Jackson with him. So he might have been out on bail and
Yeah,
went back in because and they had the state trial and they had a federal trial. So I'm not sure. We had to go back and look at that. But anyway, New African People's Organization formed in. Um, One of the things we attempted to do was to have more of a grassroots presence for the what we call the New African Independence Movement, which is forces who believe in national liberation for our people. That we're a national liberation movement. We're not just a movement for civil rights or integrating into the United States, even though some of our people are fighting for that. But it's always been from the first group of Africans that were captured and brought here. Some of us who believed in resistance, and some of us who wanted to be self-determining. Uh,
right,
all of us, we're not a homogeneous group. And where some people want to integrate into the society, there's always been different perspectives on that.
and some people want to return to the African continent.
Yeah, some people want to return to the African continent, which is something that should be respected as well. So we tended to work with youth formations or to create youth formations. We have had the New African Scout Organization. We do camps for youth, things of that nature. We
Tupac was a New African Scout. leader in the New African
He was
Scout.
a member of the New African Panthers. I have an old picture of me and him, and I had hair in that picture as well, and was thinner. You know, and we worked close with Pac. In fact, even after he left the movement, and Tupac used to sell literature, organize on the streets, things of that nature. Uh, um, but even after that period of time, until he signed with Death Row, he was in close contact with us. Brother Watani was his manager at one particular time. In fact, if you see a lot of images of Pac, uh, you'll see Watani in the same images, even the one when he left the hospital because he was afraid for his life after he was shot and ambushed in New York.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, yeah, we had a very close relationship with him, of course, with Matulu, who's his was his not his biological father, but his father in reality. And then with his mother, Fanny. Fanny was like a big sister to me.
You
So,
know, I was going to say, in terms of Pac, when we first formed the Black Radical Congress, my wife and I, we always spent our summers in LA, and we did work with COPPA,
uh-huh,
Coalition Against,
police,
and
yeah,
Brother Twilight, gang brother that got involved in the movement.
I don't know him by
Dennis
personally.
DeVere Smith did a play that was named after him. Anyway, he worked with Kappa. He told me that as long as Tupac was alive, all of them Negroes, Snoop, the whole West Coast folk donated and gave money to Kappa to keep the struggle going. But as soon as Tupac was off the scene,
Oh,
they,
wow.
they became who they became.
I believe that. I didn't know that personally, but Pac was for contributing to the movement, and even in some of the conversations I had for him, he was talking about holding rallies in front of the prisons for political prisoners like Sekou Odinga, things of that nature. Uh, but to be transparent, I think Pac was always caught between revolutionary politics and lumping mentality.
Mhm.
And you see that in his music.
Oh,
But
absolutely. You see it in his whole dress and behavior. Yeah,
right, the whole thug like piece,
yeah,
which some of us challenged him on. And if you're gonna use it, then try to politicize it. Uh, uh, but there was always that struggle there with him. Uh, and I think he was trying to. I think it's unfortunate that he did get a chance to mature.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he was killed too soon before he did that transition. If that was going to happen, because with the pull of that money and the materialism and
yeah.
all, it's a hell of a thing to come back. I don't want to be uh
Romantic.
yeah, we got to look at that critically.
Yeah. So look, let's move on, and I want to thank you for that history. So NAPO, Malcolm X grassroots movement, has historically had a fairly close relationship with the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela. So first, can you talk about the accomplishments of the Bolivarian Revolution, particularly what it meant for Afro Venezuelans?
All right.
Man,
I hear you. No, uh, man, not only for Afro Venezuelans, but for African people in general. And what for a lot of folks might, what is the Bolivarian Revolution? And in the 1990s, a man who was a political prisoner, Hugo Chavez, he was in the military, and he was actually attempted a military coup, but was unsuccessful. And when they negotiated with him during the military coup, he said he would stand down if he was given an opportunity to speak to the public. They gave him the airways, and he spoke to the public. And the people fell in love with what he was talking about. Because basically, as everyone should know now, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in
Right.
the world, and so there was a bourgeoisie, an elite that controlled those resources,
Mhm.
not utilizing them for the benefit of the masses of their people. The people, and also their economy was being controlled by the United States, where they were implementing neoliberal uh, economic policies,
Mhm.
took even more resources from the poor, in terms of healthcare, in terms of education, and just in terms of the quality of life. That created a more of a demand for the type of things Chavez was talking about. He was actually, as a political prisoner who attempted a military coup, because of the popular demand, was released from prison, and then he ran for president, won, and after he ran and won as president, he organized a change of constitution where, in creation what they call the Bolivarian Revolution, in the name of Simon Bolivar, who was considered the liberator of South America, because you think about Colombia, you think about Bolivia, you think about Venezuela. They all get their independence from the Spanish colonizers then. But then, with the Monroe Doctrine and the influence of the U.S., the United States, in their own, the term comprador, their own sellouts,
Mhm.
who kind of take the resources from the masses of people. So if you ever visit Venezuela, you'll see a lot of people living in, like, these poor communities in the
So
mountains,
they're like falafels.
like
Uh,
the favelas in Brazil.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so you'll see these like shanties all up in the mountains. And so the Bolivarian Revolution included those folks, included the people who were on the farms, included the indigenous people of the country, but also included black folks, or Afro descendants, they call themselves. And so, and I find it interesting that uh, you see the emergence of the Afro descendant movement around the same time people are mobilizing to go to Durban. And so that when
Mm.
they start the development of their national movement, uh, uh, is connected to that. So even while black people are benefiting from changes in terms of education, they're changing in terms of access to medical care. Of course, Cuban doctors come and assist
Mhm.
developing a medical program, in terms of having access to food and things of that nature. And then, of course, a lot of this coming from the increased uh, sharing of the wealth that's coming from the oil industry. And the other things that are being implemented is, you have a national day of recognition of Afro descendants. You have organizations of Afro descendant youth. One of the things, and I was able to visit, was there was a chocolate factory that was run by a cooperative, run a workers cooperative, I should say, that was run by black people in one of the most populous Afro descendant districts in Venezuela. So it was very intentional
Mhm.
terms of setting up a center for Black studies. They call for the Center of African Knowledge in Caracas, the main
Yeah, yeah.
city. So these things are happening along with the other economic changes that are happening for Black folks in Venezuela. But I said it has an impact for all African people, because also they're looking at supporting other Black folks, Black not only nations but Black communities in the Americas. They're reaching out to African nations,
Yeah.
uh, as we see the development of the Alliance of Sahel states and things,
Mhm.
of that nature, Venezuela, even prior to that development, is trying to reach out and support and have relationships with African countries. Of course, their relationships with other people in the Caribbean, like the Cubans. Um, they became Nicolas Maduro, who they claim is a drug dealer.
Yeah.
Uh,
Shit.
now we find out his his criminal organization cartel doesn't exist. Now they
Yeah.
have him in custody, but he was the first Latin American leader to support reparations for
Mm.
people of African descent. He signed on to that. He also signed on to the decade of people of African descent. Uh, my first trip down there in 2018 was around him making an event out of that signing, which Danny Glover, who was the ambassador for the United Nations for the UN Decade of People of African Descent, was invited, and he and Nicholas Maduro welcomed him at that particular time. And it was that time he pledged that he wanted to hold a meeting to support reparations. And Nicholas Maduro also said that he was going to utilize the economic what do you call it? The economic union that Venezuela, through its oil industry, was supporting to support. They were going to lobby them to support reparations for African people, and also at that time, I think he was head of the non-aligned movement, and he wanted to lobby them. So he had made a stand and was utilizing his economic position to lobby around the question of reparations. Invited the CARICOM countries who would call for reparations. How many years ago? It's been a couple of decades now, right?
Yeah, yeah. 2014
Yeah, so
came
about
out
20
with a
years ago.
statement. Yeah.
And
You
so,
know, I remember a lunch that you organized with the ambassador to Mali, I believe, Venezuelan. It was the NCBS conference in
oh,
Atlanta.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, we had that, but we had a brother from Colombia actually.
Okay.
From the Afro descendant movement in Colombia, and now we see the developments there, but also the threats that the Tangerine terrorists is making it against Colombian people at this time, and Colombia's had uh, they've had a change in government, a more progressive
Yes,
government, a more
absolutely.
anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist government. We noticed that the vice president is a black woman.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
she
yeah,
was
that's right.
fighting hard
Yeah.
on speaking for Colombia on an international level about the rights of people of African descent and for reparations as well. And so this is part of a global movement. And I think it's interesting at this time the forces who are support of reparations are
Mhm.
being attacked by forces who are trying to bring us back to plantation society.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Time
We're
I
gonna go
talk
back to the 1890s.
yeah.
Okay, so I know that you guys issued a statement on the illegal kidnapping of President Maduro. Can you just kind of speak to that statement?
Right. It's basically calling for his return. I think I was moved, and at the time we made the statement, he hadn't come to court yet, but he defined himself as a prisoner of war because he was captured and brought there. He wasn't wanted for any thing that's criminal, right? They tried to disguise it and turn him over to the DEA, saying that he was involved in the drug traffic, and so but he made it very clear this is a question of you capturing a leader of a sovereign nation under international law. You consider him a prisoner of war. It shouldn't be dealt with in U.S. courts, actually. And I don't know if his legal team is dealing with this. He actually can only be tried by international tribunal. And so just to support the worldwide call, because we weren't the only ones making that call, people from around the globe were whether they were states, whether they were social movements, were making the call that he and Celia Flores, the first lady, who they call the first combatant, she's a member of the National Assembly, and she's been an activist throughout the history of the Bolivarian movement in Venezuela. So she's a revolutionary, and she's a patriot in her own right. They need to be returned. So that's basically the call. And that actually that we need to make it clear, as we are leaving the King holiday, that as Martin Luther King said, the United States is the greatest purveyor of violence on earth. And then under this administration, it's like on steroids.
Oh,
it's on steroids.
Absolutely.
This guy talking about taking Greenland, taking Panama, taking Canada,
bombing Mexico,
even
bomb Nigeria,
yeah,
Iran, yeah,
supposed to be their allies.
Yeah.
He's gobbling up other imperialist countries.
This is maddening. So I want to come back and take some time to talk about the assault on immigrants. And I want to do it in the context of perspectives in the Black community and just get your take on it. So there's always been a multiplicity of views. I mean, on any topic, there's a multiplicity of views. Among the African American nationality, I think I see three views on the question of the assault on immigrants. And one, there's a popular sentiment that's I think it's called FAFO, fuck around and find out. And so there's a sense in the Black community that we've been trying to tell y'all, and you didn't listen. Now you done found out, right? And so it seems somewhat being gleeful,
right,
in the assault on Latinx people, but not just Latinx people, Caribbean, right, and African, Somali nations, right?
right.
So that's a kind of popular sentiment in the Black community that seems to kind of support the deportations, right? Then there's a real straightforward argument circulating in our community that these people are an economic and or a political threat to us. So good, right? Really right wing position. Now, there's also the position amongst radicals that calls for solidarity with the targeted populations. So, can you elaborate on each of these perspectives and interrogate where the hell they came from, and then explain why we must oppose ICE and the Trumpian fascist immigration policy?
We've always been bombarded, and you and I just talked about our childhood, right? And we were bombarded with ideas. I tell my students today, I was cheering and crying about what happened at the Alamo, not realizing that they were fighting. The people who were defending the Alamo were fighting to expand enslavement.
Yeah, that's right. Mexico had abolished slavery, right? And I think 1821 or 1822.
I forgot the year, but yeah. And so, we've always been with our colonized education being taught to be good colonial subjects. For folks who are saying that I'm trying to remember the first example is like uh they're finding out what experienced us or what black people been going through. Now that's a very unsophisticated look at people who've been immigrants. I mean, we've had some immigrants, people who weren't born in the U.S. empire or in the jurisdiction of the U.S. who've been active leaders in our struggle. You know what I mean? So uh, that's I've had comrades growing up over the years, people from a variety of different ethnic groups, and some of them again were immigrants from different places. So some of them have been in the forefront of the movement, and some of them, like some of us, have been pretty backward. So it's a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
unsophisticated, uncritical look of who these populations are. And of course, like Richard Pryor said back in the day, a lot of them are miseducated too
Hmm.
about who we are and how they should deal with us, and whose interests they should align themselves with. Should they align themselves with white America, or should they align themselves with ours? And of course, we know we had just like you had some Negroes supporting this fascist regime that appears now. We had some people who were so-called immigrants who voted against their not voted but uh,
To work against their interests.
that happens amongst oppressed people. Uh, but if we're going to be successful in terms of overturning the powers that mean to eliminate both of us, we need to have some unity. We need to have some cooperation. We need to have some communication between each other. Uh, and we need to actually have some solidarity, support each other's interests. When we look at ICE, I mean, while ICE is targeting people who are undocumented, they claim they're
They
talking,
claim, they claim.
but
Yeah, there's some lying mofos.
we've seen it being just a reinforcement of an occupation force,
Yeah.
right? A reinforcement of occupation force, and almost, given the fact they're masked up and stuff, they're almost like a secret police.
Oh yeah.
The part of the Trump, to part of the MAGA movement.
They're like those folks that were back in Colombia about what 20, 30 years ago. Those death squads,
Death squads, secret police,
secret police. Yeah.
right? So they're giving carte blanche in terms of killing people, as we saw in the case in Minneapolis, where even they said don't believe the camera, right? Don't believe what you see, believe the lie. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's interesting to me how the public opinion is strongly against this at this particular time. So that's I think it's a positive that people aren't going for the lie. The majority of people in the empire aren't going for it. The question is can the resistance continue to mount? And it's not just a thing that should uh I know the narrative is out there. We could just sit this one back. No, it involves all of us. It's a force. Again, the secret police force uh, is being used against all of us now, and it will be, if we normalize that practice, will continue to be used in the future. So we need to mount as much resistance as we can to it at this particular time. I know some of my students were saying about the No Kings uh,
Mhm.
Mario. We could sit that out because white people have they allowed him to get elected. The reality is if we don't mount enough resistance, then that MAGA movement is even stronger. It's
That's right.
my concern, even if he lost the election, that there are still a mobilized force out there. They were talking about civil war if he lost the election, right? So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a question of us becoming more and more organized as a force of resistance. And we're going to have some people we don't agree with in there, right? But
Right.
can we
Right.
develop a popular front and make sure we around our interests, even with the popular front, to have a strong enough presence, because we're talking about something that's gonna go on for decades. They're not disappearing, and we have to begin to organize our communities, and protect ourselves, and protect the interests of our children, right? Uh,
Mhm.
Interests that's going to be talking about our our lives, how we're going to live. That's where we're at right now. We got to be crystal clear that that's what it's about.
So I want to turn to what I would say is a different front of that struggle, and this is in our community. So NAPO, Malcolm X, has developed a nomenclature that the people that we generally refer to as African American, Black American today, your organization uses the term New African.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you explain why that terminology and what does it convey about the historical processes of creolization and ethnogenesis?
Well, the term actually was developed. I mentioned Queen Mother Moore, who's considered mother of the reparations movement. It was a conference in 1968 during the height of the Black Power movement in Detroit, Michigan, called by your elder Mario Bedelli and his brother.
The Black Government Conference.
Black Government Conference in Detroit, and they were going to call for a development of a new nation. They did call for the development of a new nation, and Amari was going to propose. It was called New Songhai, but Queen Mother Moore pushed for New African, and she was able to win the day. And what did they mean by New African? Was they meant if you look at our history, when I say our history of people of African descent in this country, particularly those of us whose ancestors were enslaved inside the continental United States. We come from different ethnic groups from Africa, people called tribes,
Mhm.
like the
200.
Igbo, the Balanta, the the Mandinka, for
Yeah,
all these
yeah.
different ethnic groups.
Congolese,
Michael Gomez
Bakongo.
talks about in his book, Changing Our Country Marks, we began to see ourselves as one people. We're not the same African people we were on the continent, but we formed as they said at that time, a new nation here, a new group of people, a new people. And we do have, even though we have African heritage, we have unique characteristics. We have a different form of music. We have a different form of food. A lot of it based on our African heritage,
Right,
but
right,
it's something unique to us here. Uh, Even how we hang on the street, uh,
right. Hmm.
how we talk to each other, our language that some people call Ebonics is a different way of speaking. It's a unique way of speaking, and of course, we got different variations like Gullah Geechee speak. We got the speech in around the New Orleans area. Most of us know if we see hearing a brother or sister from New Orleans. I can oftentimes tell where somebody's from, what part of the country they're from by listening to how they speak. And it's different from how the white folks speak
Oh yeah,
in our
absolutely.
particular community, unless that white person been hanging out with us.
And something that's interesting, right? When you meet a brother from France, a sister from the UK, they sound just like the white folks in those countries.
Hmm. Hmm.
Accent the same. Idris Elba, you hear the accent.
Right. Right.
We don't sound anything
Right.
like
That's right. That's true.
these folks.
That's true. That's true.
You know, So now I want to push to what may be a somewhat difficult question, but I want to get at this that the names have meaning and
Mhm.
reflect a sense of history and a sense of politics, right?
Right.
So let me get to it here. Hmm. So you guys got the New African thing. Revolutionary nationalists have pushed the term New African.
Hmm.
There are a group, Pan African, a certain type of Pan Africanists, right? Many, I would say, the All African People's Revolutionary Party and
Hmm.
folks who come out of that orbit have historically pushed the notion that we are Africans,
Hmm.
right? No new, none of the just we're Africans.
Hmm.
And today, many young people have taken up this term that they call foundational Black Americans.
Hmm. Hmm.
Can you compare and contrast the historical interpretations and the politics inherent in each of those appellations?
Right.
And can you explain why this foundational Black American thing has caught on with our youth and why it's such a dangerous
Right.
worldview?
You know, around the first piece of us just being African, we are Africans. We are African people. And I would say, in the context of Pan Africanism, we should identify, but even on the African continent, I mean, there's something called Burkina Faso, there's something called Mali, you know,
And there's something called the Open Bundu, the Shona.
right, the ethnic
Yes,
group.
yes.
Yeah, the ethnic groups that people
Yeah.
come from. I think Kwame Nkrumah talked about nationalism, Pan-Africanism, socialism, and so in that context, and we NAPO, uh, MSGM, we're Pan-Africanists as well. We do have unity and we with other African people and need to unite and organize in a Pan-African way, particularly right now, right? So,
Mhm.
but at the same time, we need to mobilize our forces, our energy here, and not see that as in contradiction that we are Pan Africanists, but we also fight for the liberation of our people here, and also to again to recognize the uniqueness of our struggle here. Even on the African continent, they recognize that uniqueness when they see us as their cousins, their brothers and sisters, uh, and identifying what aspects of that culture they see that comes from here. And then all of it, that culture they see and they appreciate, ain't part of imperialism, right? Of course, they sometimes they relate to the commercialism they see, but they love the music and things of that nature. The power that hip hop and before that jazz or black classical music has had internationally with our people. Even looking at how Fela took
Mhm,
what he
mhm.
heard James Brown and others, and then utilize that to create a different type of African music, right?
And
So,
even before Fela, Afrobeat,
yeah,
jazz.
uh,
It
uh,
was
that's
jazz, yeah.
something that we are an African people, but that's a different level of unity. Now, the question of foundational Black American, if you look at as I said, many of our people, we got different outlooks and consciousness.
Mhm.
Whereas, like Malcolm talked about, he didn't see American Dream, he saw American Nightmare. And I said, historically, many of us did not want to identify with the settler colony. You know, since I haven't jumped up and saluted the American flag since John Carlos and Tommy Smith in 1968.
Brother, me as well.
Right,
After
we were
that
part of a
Olympics, I never
different
stood
generation.
for the American flag again.
No, that was it.
None
That
of
was,
that shit.
and that was part. And when you talked to me earlier about that transition, many of us made that break around
Yeah,
through the
yeah.
Black Power movement, and so some of us still want to make that connection. So when I look at FBA, and even when I look at ADOS, I see
What are the
American descendants of
American
slavery,
descendants of slaves?
and I think
You see,
FBA,
I think FBA came out of that. I think it's an offshoot.
yeah, FBA
Yeah.
is an offshoot of, but there's that tied to Americanism, is a
Hmm.
tied to the settler colony, and some of us, many of us, we want to be independent. We want to be self-determining. We don't want to identify with the settler colony. So even if you look at FBAs, I noticed their logos and their artwork, things of that nature. It has the red, white, and blue. We don't
Hmm.
identify with that. We identify with the Nat Turner,
We read black and green. Yeah.
the Denmark Vesey legacy, uh, the national liberation legacy. And so, like I said, we're not a homogeneous people. Some of us want to identify with that, and many of us don't. Here's the other piece of that. Many of us or hate the African blood in us.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we don't. We want to reject it. I heard uh, one leader, FBI leader, say one time and critique. They didn't want to hear nothing African when they talk about reparations. There's a rejection of Africa, and there's a rejection of other African people uh, in the diaspora. You
Well,
know,
that's Thanos' position, right? That that reparations coming from the U.S. government should only go to people who are the quote unquote descendants of folks enslaved in the U.S. As if a person of African descent could be here for a generation and not be messed over by this colonialist capitalist society on the basis of who they are, right?
we look at the case of Abner Louima,
Yeah.
who was a brother from Haiti who was basically raped
Yeah.
by New York police officers. But the question is, when you talk about, for me, if you talk about reparations, is we have to look at, well, what is the crime? What's the harm? And if we're specifically talking about slavery, that's something. But if we're talking about structural racism that still exists, there's
Mhm.
still harm occurring to black folks. If you're talking about, like, and if you look at the Evanston case, it's based upon redlining, so you have to look at a specific time. And of course, for many of us, our children marry children from other places in the diaspora. So you're really talking about a blend. And if you're not just talking about issuing checks to people, but you're talking about remedies that are institutional that impact communities.
Right, right, right.
So I think the reparations question is broader than people just getting issued checks and me having to prove, which I can do, that my ancestors were enslaved in this country. I think we're talking about some things, which is why, and I know I've appreciated the scholarship and advocacy you've done around reparations,
Thank you, my comrade.
but I I really think that we need to really do some massive education in our communities around this reparations issue. Uh, Unfortunately, some of these groups have done more advocacy amongst the working masses than. And then when you ask me the question of the youth, I think uh, uh, the reparations movement, and it has to some degree, but it needs to do more active education amongst our people, having more conversations. I heard
Yeah.
a presentation you did one time, and you talked about similar to what during the campaign of Chokwe Lumumba for city council and for mayor in Jackson, Mississippi, they created people's assemblies.
Right, right, right,
And
right.
we need to have these assemblies around the reparations question and talk to our people, educate, but have discussions and conversations about what reparations is.
And you know the thing that I guess you could say is ironic, but it's what one would expect, right? There's only two groups of people in the U.S. who a majority of them support reparations, and that is, of course, us, New Africans, African Americans, and foreign-born Black folk, Black immigrants.
Ah,
You know,
ah,
more than 50, I think about 52% of them support reparations to African Americans, right? We're
wow,
the only two groups in the whole country that support the position.
crazy.
I find it kind of, like you say, crazy that you got folks saying, well, they
Well,
shouldn't be included.
I'm fearful that some of that is divide and conquer, and it might be emanating from people outside of our communities.
I think much of that is probably correct. Well, look, before we go to see if we got questions, I want you to talk about this very important new book that you and Sister Aneb and the late John Bracy came out with last year, the memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams, African American Freedom, Armed Resistance, and International Solidarity. So, can you know, Robert Williams is a known figure, but even amongst known figures, there are things that are unknown to the general public. So, can you talk about aspects of that legacy that have been hidden or minimized that come through in their own recounting of their history and struggle and contributions?
I would differ with you on one thing, and I found that out through working on this. A lot of folks don't know who Robert and Mabel Williams were. Uh,
Really?
yeah, when even activists, and I'm not even talking
Oh,
about young.
yeah.
When people say, "What are you working on?" I said, "I'm working on the memoirs of Robert Williams." You ever heard of? Nah, a lot of folks. And so when we entered on this project, and at first it was myself and brother Bracy, the son of Robert and Meg.
John.
He'd approached us, and he was saying, and during that time, it was right after Ferguson, and he was saying he wanted the youth, these young activists emerging, this Black Lives Matter movement.
Well, brother, I think you and I were given presentations at the Wright Museum in Detroit,
Right.
and I think that's when the connection was made.
Uh,
Charles Farrell.
Charles Farrell connected me with them, but it
Yeah,
was I think after that talk we did on urban uprisings,
yeah, yeah,
that I think it was right after that he brought me back up.
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I was supposed to meet John that week. You were there,
Right, right, right,
but then John, who he was a activist clergyman, and he
right,
was out
right.
trying to feed people. He didn't have
Yeah,
time to feed me.
yeah, yeah,
This is
yeah.
how feed folks. But so they invited me back, and he said he wanted to make sure that his parents' legacy was given to this next generation. Him and his mother were working on the memoir, first his father's memoir. She
Okay.
got sick, cancer, passed, and then he got sick and couldn't continue. So he turned it over to myself and Bracy, and we began to work on it. So and I think
Now, how did y'all bring in, and why did you bring in Aneb?
Anel, because John Bracy insisted, no, we need to have Mabel's voice in here. And so we got the rest of her writings, and it wasn't enough. And so we got interviews she had and fleshed it out. But the Williams family, particularly John's widow, Lisa, said, "So you brothers gonna work on Mabel's voice?" So we discussed it, and it was Lisa said, well, wait a minute, what about Sister Neb? And we all agreed. And it was perfect because for those that don't know her, she was engaged in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Lowndes County, Alabama, with Kwame Ture. She was in the Republic of New Africa. She knew the Williams. And since, I've lived in the South in Atlanta, she was down in a rural area, so she brought something to the table that I couldn't have brought, as well as being a sister on the thing. As well as I think there's something to be said for having a activist and a revolutionary activist sensibility to interpret things.
Yeah.
Her coming in was perfect. I wanted to say one other thing, but must have had a senior moment and lost it. But yeah, so that's how we got to it. Here's the things I would say is, of course, armed resistance, because those of you know the Williams story, them fighting back against the Ku Klux Klan in North Carolina is what bring them to national attention. The thing we got to recognize from that is they built a national movement, really, a national network around supporting their movement in Mississippi. So when you see, not Mississippi, I love Mississippi, but North Carolina, and their movement in North Carolina, if you read the names, it's people like Malcolm X, it's people like John Henry Clark, it's people like James and Grace Boggs. It's people all over the country that are supporting their movement. In May Mallory, who would
yes, in New York,
around their case. So there's this national movement that's organized around self-defense that's a part of that. But the other piece, we say armed resistance, African American freedom, armed resistance, international solidarity. Robert Williams had been supporting the Cuban Revolution from its very inception.
right.
In 1960, he was going around prior to them having to go into exile. I didn't realize that.
Just before he took they take a trip
He
that
took a trip
Baraka is
with
with.
Baraka,
Yeah,
John Henry Clark, Harold Cruz,
yeah.
John Oliver Killings. They all go, and so they're part of the Fair Play for Cuba committee. But Robert Williams is the most active member in that committee. He's invited back to Cuba. After that, they said Fidel really took a liking to him. I didn't know this at the time we published the book, but the gun that, if you see a gun,
The pistol.
the pistol.
Yeah.
And I haven't confirmed this, but that supposedly came from Fidel.
Oh man.
Not to confirm that. What is confirmed from Robert's own voice. I always thought that it was somehow he just made it to Cuba. They came and got him from Canada. They came,
I knew he had made it to Canada, and I thought that was our forces, but I didn't know how they got to Cubans. So the Cubans came and got him.
They came and got him. It was the wife of Juan Almeida, who was the black man.
Yeah.
Fidel's revolutionaries who took Havana in 1960, right? 1959, excuse me. His wife is a part of the crew going to the airport, and clandestinely they get for Robert Williams, and he gets on the plane.
Oh man!
So it's from the you can only interpret it as from the highest level of the Cuban Revolution that they come and get this black freedom fighter.
Wow.
So the international solidarity is a very important part of this story. His advocacy, because Robert and Mabel, once they get political asylum in Cuba, they didn't forget about black folks in the United States. They're still working. In fact, they still produce their newsletter, The Crusader, which is smuggled into the United States.
Right.
And they do Radio Free Dixie. That's the other thing. If we wanted to expand the title, we could also say their radical journalism was an important part of the story because they could tell.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, AK, we're not going to get the Q&A if I let you keep going. So can you do a
Okay,
quick summary, and then I want to open it up to Q&A.
you said you want me to do a summary?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Oh
if
man,
you got any last thoughts or you got
just
any
the last thoughts,
announcements,
and
do
then
that.
we had a good conversation. But I just wanted to say, I encourage people to support the solidarity demand. Nicolas Maduro, Celia Flores are return home. That reparations is something, as Nkechi Taifa said, raging all over the country. So wherever you see a local reparations group advocating around reparations, get involved in that activity, make your voice heard on the reparations front, and just continue as we talked about ICE, this fight against fascism emerging. It's an enemy to all of us.
Sante Sana,
Saki
my
too.
brother. So, first question I see comes from Josh Ingram, and he wants you to address the question as to when the RNA created the 5 states, and this is very different than the 1930s Black Belt Nation. But when they identify the 5 states, he wants to know why was Florida not considered part of the RNA's Black Nation?
I can try to give you my best answer to that. Actually, I technically believe more in the 1930 Black Nation thesis
Hmm.
because
It's contiguous.
it's contiguous, and it also defines where our people were in the majority uh, at that particular time, right? And still today, you could see people returning to those areas. Now
Oh,
they chose.
let me tell you something now. Look, 20% of our people live in Black majority towns.
Uh huh.
And if you look at, if you take 2020, where they've mapped out the Black population,
Uh huh.
it looks exactly like the 1930s Black Belt Nation,
I've seen maps like that.
but it's the numbers are fewer,
Uh huh.
but it's still extremely large.
Right. No, I've seen those demographics recently, and
Mhm.
really,
But,
when it
but you
comes
got to
down,
come back to Josh's question about Florida.
Florida, they did not include. I've seen some OGs who say because of the Seminole question, there's some aspects of the Seminole Nation who never gave up Florida. Uh, I'm not sure because I'm not sure if this was what they were originally looking at, but they were probably also looking at the demographics in the United States at the
At
time
that time,
the
yeah.
decision that those 5 states had the highest number
Yeah.
percentages of people of African descent, and not to mention, besides having the highest percentages, they were thinking at that time that Black people were 10% of the U.S. population, and that
Five states out of 50. Okay.
five out of 50, 10% of 50. So
Okay.
that was part of their rationale. But I did see some people give some acknowledgement to the Seminole. But even other than the Seminole, I know the provisional government had is in its constitution that indigenous people, First Nations, have the highest claim, and that they would support any demand for any land claim made by First Nations in that 5 state area as well.
I remember the debates with Kwame Ture over that question. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Back in the day, I remember those debates as well. It's
Yeah.
funny because when I was in
They were
college,
foundational for us back in the
when I
day.
was in college, though, he brought a member of AIM with him, and we asked the AIM person what did they think about the RNA demand, and the AIM person said they supported it. In fact, we have a statement from Bob Robidoux, who was with the Leonard Peltier Committee and AIM at that time, supporting the RNA in 1983.
Okay, I've got a statement by Dre with without, and the statement is reparations is a capitalist system eats itself because the Ma'afa is still happening. I'm not sure. Can you make something out of that?
Yeah, I think they're saying to get reparations while capitalism is happening is uh continues the Ma'afa. Now, it depends on how you define the reparations. Because if you look at the international law, one of the things is creating measures to prevent repetition of it continuing. Be it
Mm-hmm.
as it may, it depends again how we're looking at this piece. Reparations to me does not equate national liberation.
Right, right.
Reparations to me, if we look strategically, can aid us,
Facilitate, yeah.
facilitate us moving towards self-determination. So we have to look at it strategically, which is why it doesn't need to be something that's just figured out by a group of small people, a group of
Mm-hmm.
petty bourgeois individuals.
Right, absolutely. The Congressional Black Caucus should not be making determinations here.
We need to have again some critical discussions and conversations within our community and think about strategically how it's going to help us build to put ourselves in a better position to aid our children and unborn generations.
So this is the last question we got, and it's from Ben Berg, who's been quite active. And the question is, can you discuss how true reparations is the outcome of an international lawsuit related to regaining national sovereignty?
uh, mm, an international lawsuit to
The legalism shocks me, but yeah.
well, I was going to
But,
say, for me, for us to get national sovereignty is only going to come from us being able to organize our people, not for international lawsuit,
yeah.
but we would have to
We
have.
may file such international lawsuit. We may file international
We might
lawsuit,
file
but
one
that
for
ain't going.
public opinion, right?
Yeah,
But it's only going to come from us being able to be organized and us to be able to make sure business ain't as usual.
yeah,
You know, we're gonna have to resist. It ain't nobody's gonna give us anything, right? But we're gonna have to be able to resist and have the capacity to fight by any means necessary. And so, you know, if that means like people not going to work, if it means people shutting down certain industries, if it means people making certain that commerce don't happen,
mhm.
that's the only way we're going to be able to put ourselves in a position. Not to mention, I don't know if it'll be an international lawsuit, but we're going to need some international solidarity. You
Well,
know,
that's one of the good things, right?
uh-huh.
It's a constructive spin on what the fascist child is doing is that as the world comes to see the United States clearly as the rabid beast that it has always been, and you see the U.S. becoming more and more isolated, that does create an international environment that becomes helpful to us in our struggle for liberation as we see these other parts of the world break with U.S. dominance.
That's true. I think we have to have a clear voice and position that people around the world see us calling for self determination
Yes.
and to see that we're not aligned with the imperialist politics of our oppressors. You know, so it's similar to what we did in during the Vietnam War era, right?
Right. That's
Uh,
right.
it got to the point where some of our people were combatants in Vietnam, and the Vietnamese treated them differently. right?
Oh, look, um, you tell me because you did the memoirs. I might be getting Robert Williams confused with Huey when he went to Vietnam, but one of them they they were talking with General Guy
Yeah,
and and was
it
saying
was
that
Rob. He talked about them using the tactics from the
yeah, yeah. He said the
Corvette.
urban. He said that
Yeah,
we
exactly.
learned how to fight urban warfare from
Right.
watching what y'all did.
Right. And also reading Robert Williams' piece on a minority revolution, right, can be successful. They said they learned from that. So when they did the what was a
It's
great
it's, uh,
Vietnamese offensive?
it's not Dien Bien Phu. It's
Yeah, because that's the
yeah,
French.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I know. Yeah,
yeah,
we on
yeah,
the same
yeah, yeah,
page.
yeah,
We
yeah,
just we
yeah.
just having senior moments.
Both of them simultaneously.
Right, right.
But
Right.
yes,
No, but no, the great military defeat of the American forces was
the
inspired
Tet
by
Offensive.
Robert
The
Williams' work.
Tet. It was Tet.
Tet offensive.
TET. Tet Offensive.
Tet offensive.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Too Black.
Huh?
All right, man. We need to wrap it up, my brother. It's always wonderful.
And
Always
we
wonderful.
congratulate you again on your retirement.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Even though that just means you're not working for white folks no more.
Absolutely. I'm doing the same
You're
stuff I
working,
was doing,
huh?
except for I'm not going to the university. We run a
Right.
freedom school. That's
But
what we doing.
you're still working in support of your people. So
Yeah, that's right. All right, brother. Shut it down. I'm gonna take you out. I'm taking myself out, and we're gonna start playing the exit song.
Black Liberation Media is a collective of Black and African organizers, journalists, academics, and media personalities serving Black and African masses seeking to further grow in their understanding of themselves, their histories, and the African world through entertainment and news. Please continue to like, subscribe, and donate to the channel so we can further serve you and liberate our people. You can also go to blkliberationmedia.org, get some merchandise, and also become a Patreon member and a member from the YouTube. Please do what you can, share, and show your love as we will show ours for you. Black Liberation Media.